Madam Chair, I will note that we're just one short of quorum. So we'll get started shortly. There are a couple more that said they were coming, so they're probably just parking. And then I do have 3 members that are participating virtually, but we can't let them in until you've all approved it.
Archie, are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody settled it. All right. I would like to call to order the February 2nd, 2022 2022 Citizen Advisory Committee meeting. The Palm Beach TPA is conducting this meeting both in person and virtually using the Zoom webinar platform. Instruction to join the virtual meeting as well as the contact information for assistance are provided on the published meeting agenda. Staff, at this time, can you please call roll to establish a quorum?
So at this time, oh, that's louder than it was this morning. I'm sorry. At this time, I'm only asking those CAC members attending in person to respond by saying here when I call your name. And then as a reminder, the button on the base is to unmute and mute. And when it's red, it means you're live and we can get you on the recording. So Ryan Rossi,
Here.
Michael Fitzpatrick,
Here.
Cheryl Snyder is absent. James Garvin,
Here.
Mark Bruner,
Here.
Ramona Bean, Paula Ryan,
Here.
James Bonfiglio, Richard Vazzalotti, Michael Carter, Mark Forrest, Vijay Mishra,
Here.
Francisco Gill is absent, Myron Uman,
Here.
Terry Brown, Greg Fagan,
Here.
Jim Knight. The city of Belglade, Green Acres, Lake Worth Beach, and Riviera Beach will be marked as absent for the meeting. Albert Richwagon, Wen Dang.
Here.
We have a quorum in person, Madam Chair.
Okay. So at this time, are there any modifications to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have 2. So the first one is for your virtual participation. We have the following members that asked to participate remotely. I have James Bonfiglio. He is unable to enter our offices at this time due to our in-office restrictions for COVID. I have Richard Vazzalotti is unable to attend in person because his wife is on duty and he needs to pick up his children from school. And lastly, I have Terry Brown. Due to the TPA not having a readily accessible handicap parking space in front of our office and his recent medical change.
Okay. Are there any objections to allowing these members to participate remotely? Okay, seeing none. These members are approved to participate remotely. So if at this time, please note that attendance within the meeting minutes and allow them to enter into the Zoom meeting.
Yes, Madam Chair. And then I do have one additional modification. Our staff is asking to reorder the agenda to hear action item 2B first, and then 2A second, as the safety targets discussion will lead into our first information item.
Okay. So are there any objections to allowing the changes in the agenda? Seeing none, we'll proceed as recommended.
Thank you.
So the next item is to the motion to approve the minutes for the December 1st, 2021 agenda. Are there any changes? So if not, can we have a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Margie, you get that as Paula Ryan for the motion, and the second is by
Mark Bruner.
Mark. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is the general public comments. Are there any written comments? And as a reminder, there are 3 ways to provide public comments for this meeting. First, written comments may be submitted online and at the website provided in the agenda. Second, the verbal comments may be made virtual by virtual attendees using the raise hand feature in the Zoom platform. And then lastly, verbal and written comments may be provided in an in-person attendee submitting through a comment card at the welcome table. Do we have any comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right. Are there any comments by the chair and committee members at this time? I'd like to open up to any committee members that has something exciting to share with us, starting with James.
I just wanted to express the appreciation to the TPA for their hospitality on January 19th. We had the Leadership Palm Beach County Focus Program come in, and we staged a transportation panel with Steve Abrams, Clinton Forbes, Valerie, and Andrew, and it was very well received by the crowd. And just wanted to say, from behalf of Leadership Palm Beach County, thank you for the hospitality and working with us on that.
All right, great. That's so exciting. Are there any other member comments?
I have Michael Fitzpatrick and Richard Vasilati.
Okay, so Michael and then Richard, please.
Just to give an update, I've been working on the plugin. Should the TPA support the 50% of new vehicles be plugins by 2030, and I'm up to 60 pages. Half of it's boilerplate, and there's a lot of figures and pictures in it. But I thought I'd be done by now, but 2 weeks ago, my wife unexpectedly got a kidney, so that's kind of upset things. But I'll probably have it done in a couple weeks and send it to the staff to send out to the rest of the board. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And we have Richard.
Thank you. Happy New Year to everyone. Last meeting, we kind of got cut short there at the end. We went a little bit long and we were talking about the TDP and then the multimodal corridor study. If I could just ask a few things or make some comments on the two, I'd appreciate that. Something that really concerned me with the TDP 10-year plan is that after all said and done, there's an unfunded $127 million gap there in the end with and I quote, hope for additional funding. And then with the capital expenses unfunded was 18.8 million. And I was in the process of having to get my children and I was on my phone. I switched from computer to phone, so I couldn't comment on that, nor do I want to while I'm driving, but that concerns me greatly. I don't know where that is right now with the BOCC. Has anything been done with that, or was that voted on? Do we know? Did that pass?
I'm going to defer to TPA staff to
Okay.
respond to that question, please.
Okay.
This is Andrew Euler. Sorry.
Good afternoon. This is Andrew Yoder, Deputy Director of Program Development. Our transit coordinator is not in the room right now. We'll get an answer for you. I believe the TDP went to the county commission already, but we'll get some confirmation from him and then we can get you an update before the end of the meeting.
Okay, all right. That's a lot of money. The second thing is on the multimodal corridor study. With the online surveys, there's been, I believe, 2 that have gone out. Do they show the cost factors? Are the public aware of the cost factors between the 0 build and then the next build, I believe, is 77 million up to almost $1.9 billion for buses and bike lanes? Once again, that super concerns me. That's a huge amount of money. So is the public aware of this estimated total capital cost? I didn't see it in the survey. Maybe I missed something.
Again, please, Andrew. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes, thank you. Sorry, once again, I'll get you an answer before the end of the meeting. And if not, we'll get it emailed out to you all. That's a question for James. I believe we have those on the website, but I'll get confirmation for you.
okay. And so with the first survey that went out, I talked about top 3 priorities. And the biggest one was congestion relief, number 1, 2, health and safety, and 3, mobility choices. To me, it's extremely obvious why there's congestion around Okeechobee and State Road 7, and it's because of the westward expansion, particularly from the city of West Palm Beach and their expansion on their wetlands, and then the holdup of State Road 7 and Roebuck Road, and that's why we have so much congestion in that area. It's obvious, and in my opinion, we need to finish State Road 7 and then worry about this bus situation, because we're talking about a no build of a 51-minute travel time to the most expensive build of 1.9 billion to 27.2 minutes travel. We're going to spend that much money to save 20 some minutes in traveling, but this road that's been planned for decades is on hold for silly reasons. Let's just put it that way. So let's look at State Road 7. Let's get that done and then start looking at the bus issue if the congestion and safety doesn't improve from there. And I'm going to leave it at that.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Are there any other members that would like to comment at this time? Okay, seeing none. I'm sorry. Paula, I apologize.
That's
Paula
okay.
Ryan, please.
I'm not going to respond to any of Richard's comments, but I do have a question. Is the State Road 7 back on hold? I'm under impression that it's not on hold.
Maybe the TPA staff can give us clarification on that. I don't have that.
I can help you a little bit.
I was gonna say, the last update, and Myron might have a better update from us, but the last I did hear is that it is on hold again.
Administrative law hearing is scheduled for sometime in February.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. I have, so part of not only this committee, but I also serve on other national committees in the country, particularly the NCUTCD, which is very short acronym for the National Committee of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. There's a lot of changes that's coming out. I like to, if the committee and the board allows, I love to do a short presentation on some of the changes that might affect our communities and some of the revised rules that will help us establish better safety measures. And so, if everybody agrees, I'd like to have 5 to 10 minutes next time in March to just give a summary recap on all the changes. Oh, yes, sure. Ryan, please.
Well, I just feel like I should at least acknowledge the city that I'm here to represent, who reached a major milestone on the 25th of January by breaking ground on the new Brightline station, which will be downtown. I think it's a very exciting time for the city of Boca Raton and transportation in general for the county and the state. So we're very happy that that finally happened. And we're looking forward to the final result, which I think is anticipated to be in November or December of this year. Certainly going to be a game changer and the city's very pleased. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. I'd like to hear more from Brightline if that's an opportunity for Brightline to come in and talk about a little bit more in detail of that expansion. It does affect us from a regional perspective, especially between, we're now excited to get a new station that's going to be a service throughout the South Florida. Do you think, and this is a request, when it's feasible, if the TPA staff can reach out to Brightline and have a quick presentation for the Citizen Advisory Committee? Yes, okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Are there any other members' comments at this time? Okay, so seeing none, we're going to move to the CAC liaisons report. So Jason, please help provide us with an update.
Sure. Good afternoon. So there's a few items to go through. The first one is the Federal Highway Administration Safe System Pilot. That's FHWA. They're seeking agencies to participate in the Safe System Pilot project. And this could be existing or proposed projects to go through the safe system lens, and the applications are due fairly quickly, pretty soon in February 11th of 2022. The next item is the TPA Governing Board. That will be held on February 17th at 9 a.m. That's in 2 Thursdays. Concurrently, the Safe Street Summit for 2022 will also be held on February 17th and 18th. That'll be a Thursday and a Friday. And the theme here is resilient and adaptive streets. You can register at safestreetsummit.org, and I believe you can get there from Brightline. So it's an opportunity to either go from Fort Lauderdale or here all the way down to Miami. That's where it's going to be held and hosted for those 2 days. The first day is mobile workshops, and the second day on that Friday is the actual Safe Street Summit held in Miami. Next is the TPA transportation grants. Our grant program deadline is February 18th. We offer 3 separate grants: local initiatives, transportation alternatives, and and there's a third one too, the state road modifications. Sorry.
Yeah, state road modification, local initiative, and transportation alternatives.
Yeah, I just needed the third one. Thank you. Next is the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board. They're seeking members specifically for the children at risk. And you can find more information by contacting our liaison here for that, is Alyssa Frank. You can reach out to her for that specific position or a spot that is open on the local coordinating board. Also, the local coordinating board is holding a public workshop on February 23rd at 3:30 p.m. And that's immediately following the local coordinating board meeting. So if you are interested in that, that'll be held on February 23rd. If you would like to get more information, you can find that at our website at palmbeachtpa.org/local LCB. And next is our Transportation and Impact and Bipartisan Infrastructure Law webinar. So the TPA is going to be hosting this webinar here in our offices, and it's with our political advocacy experts, and that'll be held on March 1st from 2 to 3 p.m. And you can also learn more about this at our website as well at palmbeachtpa.org/infrastructure law. There's a grant opportunity through the U.S. Department of Transportation, and it's a $1.5 billion grant cycle for 2022. And RAISE stands for Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. And the application deadline for this is April 14th, 2022. There's a Safety First Challenge for Safer Streets. This is offered by the National League of Cities, launched the Safety First Challenge to build a coalition of 100 cities and talents or more who want to join the safety movement by taking steps in their community. And you can find more information at the website provided here on the screen and also on the liaison report. There's a couple of forms that may be on the tables for each of the members for the TPA media release form. We're seeking to get all of the members to sign these forms for media release forms for creating photos and video highlights of the work and the accomplishments from the board and the committee members. You can find this form also at the palmbeachtpa.org/media release form. There is another form as well for the TPA committee census update. The TPA has not received all the committee member responses for this particular form as well. So you can find this at the palmbeachtpa.org/TPA committee dash, let me do that again. palmbeachtpa.org/TPA-committee-census. Those are all the items on the liaison report.
Madam Chair, I don't have any virtual hands raised, but I do have Myron with his tent card up.
Okay, Myron.
I'd like to ask the staff to inform the individual members of the committee privately if they have not provided a release form or a census update form. I can't remember whether I've done that or not. And I think a broadcast request is really very useful. Let us know individually if we have been lax. Thank you.
Okay, are there any member comments virtually?
No, Madam Chair.
Earlier when there's questions in reference to the multimodal corridor study from Richard. Do we have staff to respond to that question? Yes. So I'd like to invite James to the podium. And Richard, if you don't mind coming back on Zoom and paraphrase your question. I wrote down some comments about funding gap and the cost factor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So the first thing I was asking about was the TDP, the 10-year study. In the end, it came out with $127 million unfunded with the hope for additional funding. And then with capital expenses, in the end, it was also unfunded $18.8 million. So that concerns me greatly. And I think my other question was this approved by the BOCC?
In December, the TDP was adopted by the BCC, and I can get a better clarification of what that gap actually means. My understanding from preliminary conversations when it was being developed was they identified the list of priority projects that they need to implement, and then that's getting more applied during those first 5 years of that 10-year plan. And the latter 5 years has some needs, but also like illustrative projects of desires that they want to do to improve the system if funding can become available. And so they identify what those are and what they would cost, and to identify kind of where that gap is and what they have, what they're projected to have and what they might need. But I will reach out to Anna Bieleska at Palmtran. She was the project manager for the TDP update this past time, and be able to share that information with you.
Okay. And then I was asking about the State Road 7 Okeechobee multimodal corridor. Once again, massive amount of money there. and the first project 77 million up to 1.89 billion. I mean, to put that in perspective, the United States just sent $200 million to Ukraine to fend off a possible Russian invasion. And when you look at this in these figures of a 276 possible $1 million build, and it doesn't even reaches most of your goals. These are astronomical figures, and as a responsible taxpayer, that bugs me tremendously. As far as this money, where's it coming from? I mean, I don't know what would be approved, if anything, if we're going to stay where it is, or if it's going to, which project may or may not pass. Where's all this funding coming from? And I'm asking because this meeting got cut short last December, so I apologize for having to bring this back up.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. So as part of this study, just as a recap, we are identified seven different transit alternatives to study
Right.
on this corridor, and what kind of, and we use a series of metrics to identify ridership projections, also like capital costs and operating costs that would go into it. And the costs, of course, the more intense of a type of transit service, going from a local bus to rail and even BRT in the middle, the increase in capital and operating costs goes up. And so what we wanted to show is that range, and also how that range in cost correlates with projected ridership and demand for the community. And so in the second workshop, we had that information outlined on the ridership projections and cost projections as part of the storytelling. And then at the last tab of the virtual workshop, having a survey to provide some input.
Right.
We also were able to ask people to provide input on it was a jot form interface where they were shown the different metrics broken out without telling you what the alternative is, but based on like how each mode performed on cost and on ridership and on efficiency. And you could select and like kind of see those holistically and without having a bias towards a rail or a rubber tire alternative going into it.
I mean, my biggest concern is just the cost is insane.
Sure.
And that should concern everybody, I would think. And that's why we're here to speak up about this. And I didn't hear anybody in December on either one of these, that cost that didn't, I don't know whether it concerned them or not, but to me, I find it disturbing.
Right. And so the hopeful outcome is to find an alternative that meets the needs and goals that were identified by the public, as well as being conscious of costs that would be accrued by the public through for operating. A hope is that a potential local transportation surtax that would be a replacement of an infrastructure surtax has been discussed in the future, and that would help with an operation cost. But then also by investing in a more enhanced transit service, we hit a new pot of money at the federal level for capital costs. There's a series of FTA capital improvement grant programs that once you've identified, if you're doing an enhanced transit service that's a fixed guideway, be it a BRT, bus rapid transit, or a light rail, you are able to move into a new pot of money that becomes available to help with those capital costs as well, plus other federal grant programs that we're able to tap into already.
Okay.
So
Has
that's
there
how a
been-
lot of it, that's the idea of how it would get funded, and then operating costs would be helped through a local surtax.
With the top three priorities, and number one being congestion relief, has there been any thought or study of if State Road 7 extension and Roebuck Road were completed, how much relief would be heading east on Okeechobee Boulevard from State Road 7? I think that's something that should be evaluated.
We can look into that as part of and consider that as part of the factor in the study.
I think that's very important. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I support the TPA's effort to focus on transit. And as we know, induced demands does not work. You look at the Katy Highway in Houston, 23 lanes, cost $2.2 billion and 10 years to build. And travel time is longer after than it is. So it's the way that, it's the best way to, and the most efficient way to transport people throughout the county is through transit. So, this is my personal opinion as a professional and as a board member that I support the TPA's effort to shift the focus to transit. Okay. Are there any other comments at this time on the liaison report? Paul, yes.
Thank you. I don't want to leave that subject without pointing out the fact that this is a study. What we're trying to do is evaluate as many ways as we possibly can to alleviate what is not only congestion, but high traffic fatalities, lack of alternative options for commuting. If you've got to get down Okeechobee Boulevard, you have one choice, and that's getting in a car. And this is a study. And at the end of the day, a decision will be brought back before those in power. And if there is a funding gap and a need for funding, there will be looked at. The TPA is not in a position to point out how this will be funded. They're here to study. They're here to give us information, and that information comes from the citizens of this community, and it gets voted on and funded by a variety of sources outside this agency. So I encourage us to continue to seek as many alternatives as we can and look to see what happens with the federal government on the infrastructure. And yes, City of West Palm Beach did sell off its wetlands, but beyond that, it is the county 100%, Westlake, and just keep going west, west, and west, and we're in Fort Myers. So at some point, we're going to have to find an alternative to getting these people to where they want to go. So keep studying and keep working hard. I appreciate it.
Yes, you're correct. The city did sell off their wetlands, and they've held up the extension of State Road 7 and Roebuck Road. And you know that these roads are supposed to have been completed already, and it's killing the people out here. That we're being destroyed with traffic. And you don't live out here. I do. I've lived out here for 26 years, and I grew up right off Okeechobee Boulevard and the Turnpike. So I've been out here 52 years. I've seen what's happened, and State Road 7 has to be done. You can't build on the wetlands. You can't put a dump on the wetlands. You can't drive through Grassy Waters Preserve on North Lake Boulevard, or 77,000 cars every day down Okeechobee Boulevard, or I-95 hitting the southwest corner of Clear Lake. And all that's okay. But then say, oh, if we do the extension, our water's going to be contaminated. That has to end.
All
And
right,
if
thank
anybody
you.
else would like to discuss this, I would love to have lunch with the city representatives here and anybody else and have a nice conversation about this one day, if anybody's interested.
All right. Thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Myron. I apologize.
That's okay. I just want to point out, I do not represent the city of West Palm Beach, and nobody in here represents a jurisdiction. We were appointed by people who do represent jurisdictions, but we are supposed to be representing the citizenry, not the political jurisdictions.
Okay, so let's move on to our revised agenda. Of the first item is the motion to recommend adoption of the amendment number 3 to the TPA fiscal year 2022 to 2026 transportation improvement plan. So at this time, I'd like to invite Andrew to present on this item. It's not Andrew.
Sorry, there's just a discrepancy in the wording, but my name is Jason. I'll be presenting this item. It'll be amendment number 3 to the Transportation Improvement Program. This amendment number 3 includes 7 projects. One is the deletion of 1 project at the request of the town of Jupiter, and the addition of 6 new projects at the request of FDOT. Now, the first part I'd just like to cover, when is a TIP amendment needed? And in this particular case, it's when a project is added or deleted to the Transportation Improvement Program. And that is what's happening here today, is projects will be added and deleted. Also, the only projects through this amendment, the only projects that are impacted by taking an action here today is the project listed in the amendment, and no other projects listed in the Transportation Improvement Program are affected. The first project to discuss is, to present here is Indian Town Road from US 1 to A1A. This project is being deleted from the Transportation Improvement Program at the request of Jupiter. And they had a town council meeting that expressed concern over the overlapping schedule with this project and the US 1 bridge reconstruction detour. The concern here was both of these projects happening concurrently could extend the length of the detour. If there's any delays in this project, it would negatively impact traffic and extend the detour for the bridge. So the town council made this decision and did not award the construction contract to build this particular project. So it is being requested to be deleted from the Transportation Improvement Program. The next project is at I-95 in high priority intersections for wrong way detection systems. These high priority locations along I-95 are listed here on the screen. They're Hypoluxo Road, Linton Boulevard, 45th Street, North Lake Boulevard, Palm Beach International Airport, Atlantic Avenue, the Belvedere Road Signal, and 10th Avenue North. Now, this funding is only for the design phase, and future funding will come for the rest of the project. This next set of projects is a collection of transit projects for funding for two private nonprofit organizations providing transportation services to seniors or those with disabilities. The funding for these transit projects come from the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, as well as the American Rescue Plan Act. The 5 projects listed here provide capital assistance to purchase transit vehicles or equipment for the Mayvolan Senior Center, as well as operating funds for the Mayvolan Senior Center and Mactown. So that's all of the project included in this amendment. And I could answer any questions you might have at this time.
Okay, I have Michael Fitzpatrick with his card up.
Is for the Mayvolan, is this the Delray Mayvolan or the Boca Mayvolan?
I did not know there was 2. I looked it up, and the one that I saw was the Boca Raton one.
I think I looked it up too, and I got 2 different addresses, one in Delray and one in Boynton, or one in Boca. And I think the Delray one was a dementia center, so I'm not thinking they have too much traveling, but I was just trying to clarify if it's the Boca. And part of my question, so the reason this is a worthwhile project, so I'm not opposed to that, but it's been occurring to me that a lot of projects are going to Boca. And does this TPA, am I wrong? Does the TPA keep any records about how funds are allocated to the various cities in the county?
I think, can you be more specific? Like,
Well, everybody puts in about, percentage wise gas tax money and things like that. So I'm just curious about how the money's getting spent. Is it, to me, it's looking like a case of the rich are getting richer, and a lot of, I think Boca has a pretty good grant writing staff. And then there's a lot of smaller municipalities that can't really afford to have that kind of city employee to do that kind of stuff. So I'm just curious if the smaller cities are losing out.
So this was a grant program that was offered through central office for FDOT. They went out and solicited responses and applications from all of these types of centers across 3 counties, Miami, Broward, and Palm Beach County. So they did it collectively as a region. And through that process, those who were interested applied for this particular funds and received the funds. And kind of that's how it is, kind of like our grant programs where it's an open call for applications, and it's whoever is interested and would like to apply, kind of apply. Now, I also looked at Mactown, and they are actually in Miami, but they provide service in Palm Beach County. And so although their operations may be in Miami, they provide services here. So that's why you see that particular one as well. So it's an open, it's open to all to apply. And, these are the
Well, my point is smaller communities don't have the resources to effectively apply. I mean, I've written or been on some grant committees and stuff, and it's a major undertaking. There's a lot of hours, a lot of research, and I'm concerned that some of the counties or some of the communities are putting in a lot of gas tax money or are not getting much return for their gas tax money because it's being sucked up by the ones that can better wordsmiths, basically. And so the other when the TPA puts out, do they have any, is there any assistance to people who from smaller communities who might want to write grants but don't know much about it?
Well, this particular item for these transit projects is an amendment request for FDOT, and FDOT are the ones that had and have this funds and provide the opportunity for all those that are interested that qualify to apply to do so. So it's out of our control to really.
Okay, I understand that. Thanks.
Thank you. We have other members with comments. I'll start with Mark, James, and then virtually Terry.
Okay, question about the funding. Again, the last projects for the Mae Boland Center and for Mactown, did you indicate that those funds are actually going to be coming from some of the federal funding that's been put out? So I know that they changed the budget, but is a source of funds coming with those projects also? You mentioned the Relief Act and some of the other money that may be coming in. Are these projects coming in essentially with some funding attached to them already?
You mean, is there a share from the, is it just the
Yeah,
funds?
from those programs you spoke of, I guess is the recovery. Act.
Okay. Yeah, well, the first one was the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. So that was the first one. And I think by the name supplemental appropriations, it's probably a one-time lump sum of funds that are then distributed nationally and then statewide and then eventually.
So
trickle down
some
to
of that
us.
money will flow into these projects. So these aren't.
This
put in here
is
without-
exactly what's happening.
Yeah, okay, that you just clarified for me what I'm, and I guess, Michael, I understand your point about some of the smaller cities. And having worked with all 37, 38 of them at one time or another, I appreciate your perspective, but when you talk about transportation infrastructure and mass transit and some of those things, places like Atlantis and the Village of Gulf and South Palm Beach, I mean, some of them, their transportation needs are essentially provided by some of the larger infrastructure around them. So they may be beneficiaries of some of these things, even though they aren't within their jurisdiction. But I also understand your point about grant writing. But I guess one of my things is looking in terms of transportation, some of those smaller communities. Now, again, the Glades is a different story, and I'm not, we'll take that out of it because they got their own separate set of issues in terms of funding and lack of support. But when you get to the coastal communities, some of those smaller communities, again, their transportation needs within their jurisdiction are relatively small, and they may be beneficiaries of some of the projects for larger operations that go on around them. I mean, that's only an observation on my part.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm really glad Boca's getting the Brightline station.
Thank you. James?
This has to do in regards to the deletion of the Indiantown Road and US 1 to A1A bike lanes. Is that going to be revisited in further years with another tip, or is that project just gone now?
It will be removed from the Transportation Improvement Program, and so those funds will be unencumbered from the project, and the DOT will take those funds and redistribute them, and we'll work with them to prioritize those funds on other TPA priorities. And I got an indication today from from their TAC representatives that they will revisit this and most likely apply again or find funding and revisit this and move forward with that project in some form.
Now, with our emphasis on pedestrian and bicycle safety, it's sad to see that scheduling conflict
Yeah.
come up, but we do want to make sure it's revisited. So thank you, Jason.
Next, we have Terry Brown that's on virtually.
Yeah,
And then Paula Ryan, please.
I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but it might be beneficial if you had someone from Palm Connection come over and explain briefly the services that Mayvolan provides, which is not only the city of Boca, they have a South County zone, and the way in which the services for senior citizens are handled in the north part of the county, and all of the information that's going on with their Palm Connection. Lou Ferry is a good person to contact. They're actually putting out an RFP now on the street to get new 5-year contract for paratransit service. So they're kind of like in that zone where they can't talk about anything, but in another month they could come over and explain to you where they are. And I think it would be beneficial for the members if they heard it directly from those folks. Thank you.
Okay, Paula Ryan, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question since you brought it up about the Indian Town Road project. That was at the A1A location, right? Correct?
Yes.
So do we have any fatality information, number of crash information, anything related to how dangerous that place is for people to walk? And is there, instead of pulling the money out, any way to delay it so that the town is in a better position to overlap their projects?
There may be data out there. I mean, we do the quarterly reports for bike and pedestrian incidences throughout the county on a quarterly basis. And I believe this bridge reconstruction is a multi-year project. And so wasn't feasible to just delay the project because it's a multi-year delay. And the difficulties with taking current funding programmed in 2022 and moving it out several years. It's not feasible to do with the work program with FDOT. And I'm sure they discussed this at length because they applied for these funds and this was construction funds. So they likely paid for the design, but wasn't able to move forward with the construction. So, there was probably cost incurred by Jupiter as well. So I know they'll come back and reapply and the funds will be reprioritized, and we'll see that on other projects. But we're always keeping track of the incidences throughout the county, especially at all locations. And this one as well, when things happen, we track them and we have, we report that either through our performance measures or through the quarterly crash reports. So there is data out there, and so it's accessible to know in the past how dangerous or what's happening in that area.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any other member comments on modifying the modification of the TIP, which comprise of 3 groups of projects getting eliminated from the TIP, right? The Town of Jupiter, the Palm Beach County design funding, and lastly is the Palm Tram operation.
Can you repeat the question again?
2 adds, 1 delete.
2 add, 1 delete. Okay.
Yeah, there's deleting 1 project and adding 6 projects.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? can we move to?
Motion to
Madam
approve.
Ch- Second,
approval.
So I had a motion by Terry and a second by Paula.
Okay. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Do we have to take a roll call vote?
No, it's not required. It will be required for our governing board, but it's not required for you all.
Used to be.
Moving on to the second item, which is the motion to recommend adoption for the 2022 safety targets. And so this time we'd like to invite Andrew to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be going through the safety performance targets for 2022. And this is one of the requirements we have at the federal level is to track and then performance measures and then provide updates and new targets for those. And safety is one of the ones where we're required to set targets annually by the end of February. That's specifically for roadway fatalities. And then we also at the same time also update the transit safety targets that we're doing annually, and that those relate to Palm Trans. So what you're seeing in this presentation, which is provided in the backup, are related to our roadway fatalities and serious injuries, and then those Palm Trans safety measures and targets. There's other performance measures that we do track and set targets for, along with some local measures. Jason's going to talk a little bit more about those in our next presentation. So I'm going to go through the roadway safety targets first, and there will be a lot of data, so I'll go slowly, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. We're required to track for safety the number of fatalities, the number of serious injuries, the rate of both of those per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and then the combined number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Our previous targets for these measures were 0. So we adopted a Vision Zero action plan back originally in 2018, and we updated that plan in 2021. We set targets for zero fatalities and serious injuries on our roadway network for 2018, 2019, 2020, and 21. FHWA at the national level has been pushing forward with target 0 as well, as zero fatalities on the nation's roadways is the only acceptable goal. You'll see a lot of the new infrastructure bills out there. A lot of the money is going towards safety and Vision Zero specifically. AFDOT's formally adopted targets of 0 fatalities and serious injuries for 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021 as well. And again, I mentioned we updated our Vision Zero action plan, and we typically are going to provide those updates to you all on the performance of those actions during the update of our strategic plan, which is happening around the beginning of the new fiscal year. So you'll see how that's progressing in July of this year. And I'm going to go through a series of slides that just shows bar graphs of the trends we're seeing. And I wanted to make note for you all that 2021 data you're seeing on the screen here is actually from a different source. It's called Signal 4 Analytics out of UF. This is just a source that has more readily available data. It's not the official number released by FDOT. So what you see for 2012 all the way to 2020, that's going to be official numbers. 2021 is these preliminary numbers that may actually change a little bit. Typically goes up a little bit more than what you'll see today as they finalize those numbers. But what we're seeing for total fatalities is concerning. There is an increase in fatalities year over year. What you see in the line is actually the 5-year rolling average for the past 5 years in that rolling average. So you can see the upward trend of fatalities. The serious injuries, same setup for the previous graph. You can see the trend actually going down for serious injuries over these past few years. If you compare this to the Florida numbers, which I looked at recently, there's actually trending a little bit more upwards. So that is nice to see that we are going down in serious injuries. A lot of these issues related to sort of how we moved around Palm Beach County these past few years and the nation, right? So fatalities, if I go back a slide, you see this increase. Well, we had less vehicles on the roadway, but we had greater mobility because of that. So higher speeds overall, and it potentially also linked to the type of drivers and more risky behavior. There seems to be more instances of people when they do get in crashes, not wearing their seatbelts. So more risky drivers out there or acting more risky on the roadways. And so that combined seems to be leading to higher fatalities. But you're still seeing a little bit of a
Excuse me.
low.
Are these the raw numbers or the vehicle per 100 vehicle, 100 million?
These are
vehicles?
the raw numbers. Correct. So increase in fatalities, a bit of a decrease going down in serious injuries. I do expect that 2021 number to go up a little bit more, probably closer to 2020. Hopefully it doesn't go up too much more than that, but that's a preliminary number as well. And then here is the total pedestrian bicycle fatalities and serious injuries combined, which is that fifth metric that we're required to report on and set targets for. You can see with the downward trend these past 2 years when it comes to fatalities and serious injuries. What you don't see in this graph, what I wanted to mention though, is that because we had the lower amounts of serious injuries, that's sort of the reason why you're seeing a decrease. When it comes to just fatalities for pedestrian bicyclists, those are actually slightly increasing year over year. So they're not displayed on this, but that's also concerning. And so the next slides are going to be the recommended targets that we've set for 2022. And what you see on the screen is the 2020 actuals. So that's the ones you see in the previous bar graphs, and then also the rates there. These are the ones released from FDOT. And then we provided some 2021 actual numbers for you, that the ones that are available for us for those preliminary numbers. And then we are recommending a target of 0 again as the measure for the target for all 5 of these categories, as 0 being the only acceptable target for Vision 0.
Can you speak into it? Thank you.
Line 2 says rates of fatalities per 100 million VMT, when VMT stands for vehicle miles traveled.
Yes.
So what is that? That's 100 million.
100 million vehicle miles traveled.
Yeah, no, but it reads then rates per 100 million vehicles, miles traveled. I mean, there's an extra million in there at least.
Oh, it looks like it. No, that the M and the
If
And
if
the VMT
M is
is
a
in-
million, you got a
it's-
million.
it's miles. Vehicles miles traveled.
Vehicle miles. So what's the 100 million referring to that you have written out?
It's right. So because it's sort of like hard to show that many on a. It would be a lot of digits, but it is 100. It's per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. So if we were to do,
Oh, vehicle miles. Okay.
so if we were to
how-
do something that wasn't in the 100th place, your rate would be like 0.00.
I see. So you,
139 or
I got you now.
Yeah.
So you doubled it up so you wouldn't have a 0.00 number.
Crazy, yeah. Yep. It's the way that it's tracked at the national level. So everyone reports this specific way. Yep.
Madam Chair, you have another 10 card.
Who provides the data on the number of 100 million vehicle miles traveled? Normalization, the easiest way to look on trends is to have it normalized. And we don't have the normalized data yet. When do you get the vehicle miles traveled so that you can get the normalized data?
Yep, that's a good question, Myron. So we get this larger spreadsheet, which might be good for you all to look at. We can send it out, but it has every MPO and county in the state and the state's numbers, and it has it the raw numbers, so fatalities. Then it has separate columns for the vehicle miles traveled, and those are the rates we use. They come out. I don't know when they finalize the data. That's why you see not available for 2021 is because we pulled the fatalities from Signal 4, but the vehicle miles travel data is not released yet until later on this year for the previous year. So we can't create a rate for that yet. But the normalized, they are all normalized to FDOT's standard for every county for the vehicle miles traveled. So they put reports out.
Is it FDOT that provides the data on vehicle miles traveled?
Correct.
Thank you.
I have
James,
another- oh,
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
James and then Michael Fitzpatrick.
Um, just for comparison's sakes, if we have a county of roughly 1.5 million people and we're looking at 204 fatalities, 886 injuries, where does that stand within a sampling of other counties of similar population? Do we have reference data just on the comparison?
We do have reference data. I'd say we're falling in line with the trends seen elsewhere about that with our major partners in the state. So Hillsborough, Miami-Dade, Broward, Jacksonville, Orlando. It's a bigger spreadsheet, and I think in the future, if that's information that you'd all like to have, we can provide that in backups in the future. And we can also send it out after this. It's a fairly large table, but
Yeah, I mean, just to understand, like, of 1.5 million people, where are we at in comparison would be very, very helpful for this discussion. So thank you.
Yeah, so Smart Growth America, and maybe that's something that you can share, staff can share with the board members, but they do research every year, and they looked at all the communities that has serious fatalities and crashes and fatalities. I know Florida has been on a very we're trending on the negative end as the worst state for pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities and crashes. And I remember probably about 2 years ago in 2018, 2019 data that the South Florida region, which is Palm Beach, Broward, Miami, the metropolitan area, we're at 14 or
I think
15.
it's 13.
It's 13 now.
It's 13.
Yeah, and I remember I reached out to Smart Growth America and demanded that they reassess the data for Palm Beach County. But I believe the Orlando metro area is generally more dangerous than this area as number one.
So what our chairs are referring to is they release the Dangerous by Design report every year. And I actually did a presentation yesterday that mentioned that I think it was 13th most dangerous urbanized area in this nation, which is the Miami urbanized area, which we're included in. And then Florida is the number one most dangerous. We typically are up there every year. It's a good report to that has a good briefing on everything like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I-
Michael.
Okay.
Well, I thought where Myron was going on that is, so you have rates per 100 million at 1.39 for 2020, but population's been increasing. So I mean, I think it'd be more useful to see that rates per 100 million over the years. So have the graphs, from 2012 to 2020 or whatever, is that 1.39 going up or down?
I thought I had in my notes for you. I
Vehicle
do.
miles traveled also tracks economic activity. And so the changes in economic activity over the last few years are important to take into account. And so what one sees a increase in fatalities, but a decrease in vehicle miles traveled, that's really scary. And that may be what has happened.
That's good information. And looking at my notes, I have it went from 1.12 last year to 1.3839 this year for fatalities, and then 6.19 for serious injuries to 6.91. So it has been going up. That's good information. I should have I contemplated providing those more slides in the slide deck for rates, and I didn't put them in there. I will put those in there for the future. I didn't know how much details to put in here, but I can put a lot more in next time.
Well, the population of Florida has been increasing every year, right? So wouldn't that, the raw numbers, is it percentage of people being killed change or not? That's what I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it's a really good comparison because Florida and Texas has been through the whole COVID-19 has been increased in population. So it'll be good information for next time. Mark, I have Richard card up before you. So if we can address him and then you.
Hey, Andrew. I'm trying to wrap my head around this Vision Zero mission. I mean, goals are supposed to be achievable, attainable, realistic. And when we talk about zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries, and that's the goal, that just doesn't seem like anything it's not even possible, considering now that our nation is steadily climbing. We're at over 40,000 traffic death-related crashes a year. I did my 30 years on the fire department. I've seen my share of horrible car accidents, and a lot on North Lake Boulevard, west of Beeline, out through the acreage in Loxahatchee. Another instance, like how are we going to get there? Just last week, we had 6 people die in a vehicle crash in western Boynton Delray area. My wife was on that scene, and there was nothing nobody could have done to prevent that crash because of the irresponsible driver that created it. And I don't understand. I really don't understand the Vision Zero and how a zero number is attainable.
Um,
Do you want me to start? Sure.
Sure.
I thank you for the comment. You know, we get that question asked often, and really, when it comes to Vision Zero, when you say, you know, are they preventable? When it comes down to are they truly preventable? Yes, they are truly preventable, right? I mean, obviously, there's responsibilities for a lot of factors, but could that incident the other day been preventable based on driver behavior? You know, I mean, that's where it comes into, if we all have the different components and everyone's working towards this, that they realize that these are preventable when it comes to education, enforcement, how we design our roadways. That's really what we're trying to strive for with Vision Zero. And it's really about the strategy of we're not having trade-offs anymore with should we be moving vehicles faster versus providing safe facilities for cars and for all modes of transportation, pedestrians and bicyclists. So when it comes to us at the TPA, when we're dealing with FDOT and the county and others, when we're designing these facilities out there, we're having these questions when we're in the meetings with them about, is this going to provide a safer facility that people can utilize, and to stop thinking wholly in the perspective of just trying to provide greater mobility for vehicles, right? So that's where it's coming down to, like, shifting the dialogue towards this is a preventable crash. Obviously, it's very difficult to get to that because of a lot of human factors, human driving behaviors, and it takes a lot of partners, but it is still preventable. And so that's what the whole tenet of Vision Zero is.
Yeah, driver responsibility, but I mean, I just that I've seen one thing work the last couple of years, and when Palm Beach Gardens annexed that property on the north side of the North Lake out west, Palm Beach Gardens Police Department really was running the radar out there. I'm out there every day, and I've had, like I said, I had my share of really bad car crashes on North Lake, and since I retired, from what I understand, I think we've only had one fatality, and one's too much from what I understand, an irresponsible driver. But they really slowed the speed down with the constant radar of Palm Beach Gardens Police. Kudos to them. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the only thing I've seen work towards achieving such a goal.
Yeah.
Because
Thank you.
that takes that irresponsible driver and has to put them in a responsible type of way of driving, especially when it's known out there that is what's happening along that roadway. And we don't have enough police officers on the road, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. I don't think you can enforce your way into a slower speed. That's why Vision Zero comes with a 3-prong approach with engineer, education, and enforcement. A few years ago, I remember doing a traffic study out to North Lake, and I believe the 85th percentile captured at that time was 67 miles per hour. So if you think about, remember the chart that typically you see that if you have a 10% chance of living, if you're in a collision, that's above 40 miles per hour. So that's the unfortunate event of what could happen. So I have Mark and then Paula Ryan, please.
Yeah, mine is just a request that the table you have up, can you just update that and bring it back to us when you get the final numbers so that we can see what, right now we're looking at a projection and we've got 2 not availables. But if you get that information, if you can just update that table and bring it back, that would be just be a good supplemental piece of information.
Yes, Paula.
Thank you. I've been around here for a long time in various different roles, but the adoption of Vision Zero came down to a lot of conversations amongst those on the governing board and the county commission. And the reality is that there is no such number that is acceptable. We're going to let 10 people die this year or 100 people die this year. So it may not be an attainable goal, but I think you have to look at it as a program. And it's Vision Zero. What do we need to do to achieve a vision, to address our vision? And I think that understanding that is going to help all of us look for ways to help fund these kinds of projects that might deal with distracted drivers or speed limits on the road. But don't get confused that Vision Zero is that an unachievable goal. It's no loss of life is acceptable. And I think that every public official would support that.
Yeah, I think Oslo reported out a couple years ago that they had zero death for 16 and under. So the program works. So James, I have your card up.
Yeah, I mean, to echo what Paula is saying, an audacious goal is a good thing. I mean, nobody wants to see anybody hurt or injured or pass in something that could have been preventable via education and enforcement, engineering. So, however, though, I will say for the purposes of this, it is more helpful to have a broader reference of information and statistics to go by as far as like, how are we doing tracking amongst similar counties and similar jurisdictions, and just to be able to frame the discussion a little bit better. Like otherwise, like I said, I'm all for an audacious goal. I think it's important, but more information is always better.
I have a few more slides.
Oh, more slides. Okay, I'm
We're
very
halfway through.
sorry.
It's okay. But what I heard, and I'll provide this to the board actually, because you guys get to see it first. But I do have, starting with population, vehicle miles traveled, and then putting those rates in there, and then also comparing to our peer partner agencies in the state. So I have those written down, and I'll be able to update the presentation for them, and then come back to you all as well in the future. Okay, so Palm Tran safety targets, and I'll be quick on these. Fixed route and paratransit service. So this is for both of their fixed route service and then their Palm Tran connection. They're also federally required to set performance targets for these 7 metrics for both modes. So it's fatalities, just like we have for the roadways. It's the rate of those for vehicle revenue miles. So that's when they're out there operating the service. Then there's number of injuries, which is all injuries, not just serious injuries. The rate of those, it's safety events, and then it's the average miles between mechanical failures. And so again, they do it for the fixed route bus service and Palm Tran connection. So that's 14 total measures. And here you can see, I know it's a lot on the screen, but here you can see the current performance from 2018 to 2021 for all those measures. And then the targets that are set for 2021, those are the currently adopted ones by Palm Tran, and they're also supported by the PPA last year. And then their new targets, which are the exact same as last year's targets. And I can explain that in a second here. So when you look at the historical numbers for Palm Tran, obviously these past few years, they haven't had the same normalized service they would have in other years, right? So due to the pandemic, they've had changes in their service. So they did see, better numbers for the most part in 2021. So number of injuries went down, the rate of those went down, safety events went down, the rate of those. They had 1 fatality last year, which is actually, more than they've had in previous years. They usually have 0. So a safe service out there. And the reason why they set targets this year as the same as last year is because of that change in service. They didn't want to start going down to a smaller rate because they based their targets off of like the average of the past few years. And since they're in a time frame where the numbers for the previous 2020 and 2021 were really based on pandemic changes in service, they wanted to stay at a more normalized target. So that's why they kept the same target for the time being for 2022. And you'll see the exact same happen for their paratransit service. So setting the same targets for 2022 as they did in 2021, but they did see good results, with their service ranges. Obviously, they had less vehicle revenue miles out there, but they had an improvement in number of injuries, number of safety events. So the recommended targets are there in the last column, the same as last year.
Okay, I have Myron with a card up.
What is a safety event? Ooh.
I'm gonna have to look it up and get back to you on that, Myron, for exact definition on a safety event. I know I should have had that one. Is it any incident? Would okay. Valerie is saying that it's any type of crash or report of an accident. But we'll follow up with the exact definition.
I have a question in reference to the number of injuries. Is that transit riders injured,
Correct. I think it's,
being injured last year?
yes, I believe it's on and off the vehicle. So walking off the stairs and you fell, that'd be considered an injury. I also, hitting another car. You can come up and answer if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Valerie's gonna provide more response.
Good afternoon, everyone. Valerie Nielsen, Interim Executive Director. I just wanted to point out that for the Palm Tran numbers and measures, although for FHWA and for FDOT, we report only serious injuries, which means incapacitating injuries from a crash and fatalities, they report all injuries. So including not so serious injuries such as you fell and hit your knee or things like that. So serious enough where you would say I got hurt while I was getting on or off the bus, but not to the point of incapacitating. So I wanted to point that out since it's not apples to apples when it comes to the transit reporting.
Okay, thank you. Are there any member comments on this item? Okay, I think we discussed that. Hearing no further discussion, can I have a motion?
I place a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, so I have Paula with motion and James on second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Now we're moving on to information items. Performance measures dashboard. So Jason.
Okay, today I'm going to go over our performance measure report card, and we have a dashboard on the website. And you'll see that at the end of this presentation. Today, I'm just going to go over some of the highlights that you'll see that we're reporting this year across a number of metrics. The first question to ask is, why do we have performance measures? And as a federally designated agency, as the TPA is, we're required to report The performance measures are also adopted into our 2045 long-range transportation plan, and that's where a lot of it is derived from. In addition to that, we track the progress of the TPA's vision for a safe, efficient, and connected multimodal transportation system. And these performance measures are also incorporated into our 5-year document, the Transportation Improvement Program that we amended previously. The overarching goals for the TPA: preserve safe, efficient, connected, and multimodal is how we structure all of the performance measures and the metrics that you'll see in the scorecard. At the end of the presentation, I'll show you the website and a clip from that. So some of the major highlights that I'd like to go over briefly here. The first is under the preserve category, and for transit vehicles, there was over 100 buses introduced to the system in 2020 for Palm Tran, reducing the number of buses that they run that are exceeding their useful life. So they really improved their infrastructure and which is their buses, from 46.5% to 9.2% by introducing all of these all of the buses that you see on the roadway. So that was a significant improvement throughout all of the highlights that you'll see. In terms of all the rest of the highlights that I'll go over are a consequence of the coronavirus pandemic that impacted travel throughout the county. The first one is a positive impact for the environment, and that's daily fuel use and daily vehicles miles traveled. Because there was a lot less people on the roadway, either commuting to work or just getting around the county in general, those numbers had reduced. And so you see an increase, or, a positive impact to the environment. The next ones are similar to that, in that travel time reliability had increased significantly, as you can see on the interstate, due to the reduction in traffic from the pandemic and people working either remotely or hybrid, or the reduction in traffic overall because a lot of things were not open. So you see an increase in travel times during those times, as well as, and the same holds true for truck travel, where truck travel had increased a bit as well because there's less traffic on the roads. However, trucks, bring a lot of things, commodities to the area. And so they are able to move more reliably through the network. A negative impact here for transit was passenger trip per revenue hour was decreased for both Tri-Rail and Palm Tran due to the limited service that they were able to operate through the pandemic, as well as a reduction in the number of riders that they saw during that time. So that made them, say, less efficient per revenue hour because they had either less service or lower ridership numbers. Now, as I mentioned, on our website, we have at palmbeachtpa.org/PM. The PM is for performance measures. If you go there, you'll see the first thing you'll see is our scorecard. It's a report card that reflects all of the metrics that we track and all of the categories that I had mentioned. And each one of these, you can click on them and get additional information for each one of the categories. So when you click on them, you'll get the methodology of what does it track, what's the terminology mean, and then some general trends of that data. So I encourage you to go there and you can see all of the metrics that are tracked, and they're a blend of the federal, state, and local metrics that we track and report, and that are incorporated into the Transportation Improvement Program, as well as our long-range transportation plan. That's all I have for you. If you have any questions.
I don't have a question. I have an observation. That's really interesting that you're reporting on the highway system, the state highway system for non-interstate roadway conditions that is in poor condition is less than 5%. So if you think about it, right, think about the city that we all live in. There's county roads, there's state routes, and there's a lot of local roads that is, in really, really terrible conditions. And typically the paving and the resurfacing maintenance responsibilities lies on the local government itself, whether if it's like the city of Boca or city of Boynton itself. And that's typically come from gas tax, and the funding difference between the two programs is astronomical. You're talking about $1 million for a local city to just pave roads versus, when you see a RRR project that goes in for $5 million. So it's just a really good, interesting observation that we're seeing, like that's why the state highway system roadway network only has less than 5% in poor conditions. So I think that's it. I don't see any other cards up. So thank you. The next item is the strategic plan and action item 6B. Is this correct?
It is not an action item. It should be the CAC operating procedures. We're going to go over that as the next informational item that I'll cover.
I don't have that on my agenda. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, well,
Yep. So we're going to go with the CAC operating
hopefully it's
procedure.
up. Is it listed on the agenda?
It should be listed as a strategic plan action 6B.
Yeah, it says modify TPA committees and support TPA initiatives. Am I?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, that's the correct one.
All right.
it
So.
is not an action item.
Okay, so point of clarification on the agenda, item 3B is not an action item. It is the CAC operating procedures to modify the TPA committees and support the TPA initiatives.
Madam Chair, the reason it's labeled as that is because it is an action of the strategic plan.
Ah.
So it's action 6B of the TPA strategic plan.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, this is derived out of our strategic action plan that we do voluntarily. It's not one of the required documents, but it's a document for us to aim higher and accomplish more goals in and above what we are federally required to do. And one of those is the operating procedures for the Citizen Advisory Committee. So we've seen, I brought this back to you. You've seen this the first time in October where I introduced the intention of the TPA to change the operating procedures for the CAC committee. And this is in response to and an attempt to more broadly reflect a cross-section of local residents and to ensure adequate representation of the county in terms of minorities, elderly, and persons with disabilities. And so with this change, what we're proposing is to change the membership from 21 members to 15 members and replace the specific requirement or structure now where governing board members appoint citizen advisory committee members. And instead, we've created a map of the Palm Beach County and carved it up into different areas geographically, but also included 8 additional members specifically for representing racial minorities, Hispanic, elderly, disability, economic development, construction and development, freight and goods movement, and lastly, private transportation providers. So all of those categories would now be new seats on the Citizen Advisory Committee. And in addition to that, as I mentioned, the geographic areas would be divided up into these areas, which is it's easier to see visually to where instead of the one-to-one relationship by each city, you would represent a specific area of multiple cities, towns, or municipalities. In this way, he would kind of represent more of a geographic area than a specific town or municipality. And so we've come up with this. Some of the methodology that we used to do this was population. So given the population, we used our, what was it? What's the term? How do the data that we use? Yeah. We use population data and carved it up by the census data, census block data. So taking those blocks and adding up all of those areas, we're trying to come up with a proportional distribution within these specific areas. They're not perfect, but we're getting closer to that. And this is kind of carving up the geographic areas in terms of transportation experience of either Western, Northwestern, Central Palm Beach, and taking in consideration that these areas have similar transportation characteristics as well. So some of the changes, applications would now be submitted through the TPA staff rather than being appointed specifically by the governing board members. And so it would be on the TPA to solicit and look for members to join the Citizen Advisory Committee. It could also come from governing board members, but this is a way to kind of change the dynamics of directly representing a single governing board member or city. And all nominations would be included, all nominations will be included in the governing board agenda. So they will always have the knowledge of who is going to be on the CAC or is interested in and applied for a seat. Now, how would the transition occur? The current CAC members, all of you would serve out your terms, and there's a number of new members. So you are not in jeopardy of losing any seats. Everybody would serve out the terms that they currently were appointed to. And then once that sunsets, if you choose to continue on the CAC, you would reapply for one of the restructured districts or, either one of the specific seats geographically or the ones listed previously. So that's the presentation. So the next actions, just to answer that question, we're going to bring this to the governing board as an informational item. If they agree to it and pass it, or as an informational item, then we will bring it back again. So you'll see this for a third time before it takes effect. And I can take questions at this time.
Okay, we have several cards in the room. I will go from right to left, if that's okay with everybody on this side, including virtual. So
No, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. For the record, there are no public comments, but I do have a member comment on behalf of Myron, who had to leave at 3.
Paula, and then James, and then Albert, and then Michael, and then Myron last. Thank you.
Thank you. So I had a chance to read the detail behind it, what the document that is marked up, as it relates.
Yes.
There's a couple of things that I think you really need to take a hard look at, and that is, one, what is your application going to look like? I think that it's important that representation be diverse, but everybody that's on this board knows what a big learning curve it is for the information, for the initiatives that you would like the citizens to weigh in on. So I think your application needs to somehow reflect, even whether they're elderly or economically, development board approved or appointed or recommended. Second, you are saying that if you are on one advisory board to the TPA, you cannot be on 2. So it does say in here you're on 1. That's what the language in the changes in the markup. So the technical advisory board couldn't, in essence, not have the same makeup of members with the Citizens Advisory Commission, which I think also was another mistake, did not taking into consideration who provides what kind of insight. I can tell you that, we benefit greatly by our chairman's position in both the technical and the Citizens Advisory Board. And then thirdly, it also notes in here that if there can be multiple applications for a seat, a specified seat, but it doesn't give you any criteria as to how you would determine who is better qualified to sit on that board to help with the initiatives that the TPA has started. So I think diversity is something that is critical, but the fact that you've got an informational gap between the average citizen, that you ought to consider some sort of training program, that if you are interested in applying to any one of the committees, that you undergo some sort of orientation from the TPA as to what that would include. And those are my comments.
Yes, thank you for those. Just a few things. I would think for if there's multiple applicants for a single position, it may be a first come, first served basis. And then for the learning curve, we're all citizens and we can all show up with whatever capacities we have. And it's up to me, it's up to the TPA to educate you, to answer your questions, and to give you all the knowledge to empower you to make an informed decision. So I offer one-on-one half an hours at any time before these meetings, and I will explain anything that needs to be explained to you because I'm a public servant. And that's what I went to school for. That's why I'm here. I serve the government. I serve you. That's why I'm here. If you have any questions at any time, there is no barrier to entry for any of you at any time. You do not have to have anything but be a citizen, interest. That's it. Just show up.
Could I
and
just
be
follow up
interested.
on that? Because the reason that I made the comment has a lot to do with the public officials that I've spoken to, which is nobody even knows what the TPA does. Nobody knows. So this is a world that everybody involved has a lot of knowledge of the acronyms, but there is a huge disconnect that we would benefit from having them at the board to know. But a lot of people don't even know that the TPA exists or that there's an opportunity to sit on a committee. So I just ask that you do greater outreach to the public before you get to the point to where you have a member sitting at the table and then educating them. But that's my point.
Yeah. James?
First of all, I would just want to say, Jason, I always have appreciate your willingness to inform because the learning curve is real coming from the citizens world to this. But I will say that there's parts of this I completely understand and appreciate, and things evolve and change and become responsive, and that's great. However, there's some of this is not, I think, as well thought out as it could be. Some of the boundary issues, like for instance, just as an example, you have the boundaries in text are North Lake and Military is the division of 4 zones, right? That cuts Palm Beach Gardens, for instance, into 4 areas. So you could conceivably have 4 people residing in Palm Beach Gardens taking up 4 seats. And there's no language in your description of how that ramification either is beneficial to City of Palm Beach Gardens or detrimental to the TPA's priorities. And I can understand the redundancy of necessarily having to have municipal appointed people when you have a governing board of municipal people. So I understand this, but I think that there's some aspects of this that could be more detailed before it moves much further, because you understand what I'm getting at? There's just some things that are just, I think, not as well thought out as they could be.
Like the geographic areas could be more well-defined or.
Well, it's not only
distinct.
well-defined, but it's just, I think that while I understand the need to put certain types of infrastructure within a certain group and things like that, as you're describing, I think that some awareness of municipal boundaries, or for instance, the 561 plans, zones of emphasis going forward, could be parts of the equation as well, because you have a large chunk of the Western communities in one thing, but part of that, but we're talking about SR7, we're talking about Okeechobee and how that you're dividing that project into zones now, so you could have one zone represented and then another not. And that's not going to give you a cohesive input that I think you're hoping to achieve. So
I did recognize that, and we did kind of create these geographic areas using the transportation network, looking at primary corridors as opposed to municipal boundaries. And so therefore you'll see a municipal boundary covered in, say, multiple areas. And so that will be a consideration and will have to be kind of vetted out and fine tuned of how to prioritize applicants. So you don't have the overwhelming, more people in a single area covering, representing multiple of these geographic areas, but living in the same city.
And like I said, I think that would be beneficial to this conversation if some of that was fleshed out in more detail before it's voted anyway, because
Yes.
it's a giant gap.
And we're bringing this for this purpose, to get this input and to fine tune it a little more and, or a lot more, whatever it takes, and then bringing it back to the board, our governing board, to get their input again, and we'll see it for a third time, possibly more, however many times it takes to really get to a comfortable level of comfort to adopt it and to bring this into fruition or not.
All right, thank you. Albert, and then Michael, and then we have the virtuals.
So yes, Paula said it quite well. I agree with Paula and James as well. I would just like to add that eliminating city representatives as a whole are eliminating people that have institutional knowledge. I know why I was appointed to the board by the mayor, and that was based on my 30 years of being involved with Delray's bike, pedestrian, and traffic issues, being on multiple boards across the years. So having a person from the general public at large have that knowledge or be able to bring that information to the table is going to be a very difficult thing to find. It's hard for all of us to get to these meetings with our schedules and so on. And I think it's great to have the diversity. I think that should be added to the board. But I disagree with eliminating the city representatives, because every city has their own needs, and I represent across the board of all diversities. I'm not here just for the rich guy in the car, but I'm here for the poor guy on the bicycle and the walkers as well. So I just think that you should think it out a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's great input as well, to where maybe one part is more feasible, adding the specific characteristics that we outlined in terms of specific groups, but maintaining the one-to-one relationship as well. So just kind of filling out the board with the missing pieces, but keeping the relationship with the governing board. It could very well, and that's why we're here, to get this input, to say, what are we comfortable with? How do we want to see the constituency of the CAC? What do we want to see it comprised of? Maybe we need more members from different backgrounds, but keep that, what you're saying, the geographic relationship. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Whose idea was this? Who's patient zero? Who's the one that came up and said, there's a problem with the board, let's fix it?
I don't know if there's an answer to that. It's just,
It just slid under the door.
Sure, it's a good question. I think some of the concerns we originally sort of set out on this were two things. One is the first set of ones for Jason were the ensuring we meet the diversity of our CAC, and so those were those different categories of like elderly, minority population, business community, all that. The other one, when it comes to the jurisdictional boundaries, was actually something Myron, he's not here anymore, but alluded to sort of in a previous comment about your responsibility as a CAC member, and are you beholden to your elected official or not? So that's more of like a dynamic that's not really set in stone in our operating procedures, but are you acting on behalf of you as a citizen with your own viewpoint, or are you acting on behalf of who appointed you, right? So that's where that's sort of the power dynamic that you
That
don't really
wasn't
see.
the question. Whose idea was this?
We had a strategic plan action from the board to evaluate based on criteria to how we can better align with our vision at the TPA. And so it would be leadership at the TPA when it comes to concerns we've heard about diversity or not meeting diversity standards, and then potentially issues with the elected officials and appointments to the CAC. So staff.
Okay, so this is a staff initiative. So nobody on the governing board said, hey, there's a problem with the CAC, fix it.
Not in those like words specifically.
Okay, looking down here, so what you're looking for is a racial minority who's resident, who identifies other than as white alone. Perhaps our chair fits that. Going by names of some of the people here, I think we already have a Hispanic on the board. Elderly, myself and others well represent that. Disability, we just had one member say he can't show up because there isn't a handicap parking space. And I'm curious, under disability, you say physical and mental impairment. What level of mental impairment do you want serving on the board? I don't understand what you mean by that. And then the next four are not citizens, they're representatives of special interest. They get enough input with their political donations. They don't need any more. We're supposed to be citizens. And then the rest is dividing up by geographical areas. Well, we're all from different cities. We've already got that one covered. So to me, this looks like, you know, a solution looking for a problem, because we're pretty much where what you're looking for already, except we don't have the representatives from special interest. So, and we may have that too. I mean, some people here are, you know, I know are in development and stuff, so they're already on board. So I don't understand why this is happening at all. I wouldn't support it.
Thank you. I believe Ms. Nielsen has a comment.
I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of you for being here and for your input. Paula, the great recommendations on, you know, getting the word out about who we are. James invited us, well, actually, we hosted a Leadership Palm Beach County focus group here where we asked the room full of about 60 people, do you know what the TPA is? And they said no. So one of our goals is to get more out into the public, to do more presentations, to do, and now we have 2 full-time positions in PR. Cassidy's here, a PR specialist, and Melissa. So it is one of our goals to ramp up that public outreach and get the word out and invite more participation. In terms of this reevaluation of the CAC and potentially adding or revising the membership, it's not something we have to do. And maybe we can provide a survey and ask for you guys for your input and some recommendations on potentially things that you like or don't like, or maybe we don't fix something that's not broken, but maybe there's some things that we could add to it without taking up more time here. But it was something that was in our strategic plan to look at our committees as a whole and see if there are any improvements that we could make to membership. And I think this was a first stab from staff to see what your thoughts are. And this is really valuable feedback that we heard today. So we can follow up maybe with a survey on any additional thoughts. And if there isn't anything that should be changed, then we maybe leave it as it is. Or if there are some improvements, then we can, you know, add additional positions or whatnot. So I just wanted to chime in on that. I think this, as Jason mentioned, and Andrew, here's a kind of a stab at it. What do you guys think? And we've heard a lot of really good feedback today.
All right, thank you. Ramona and Albert, is it okay if we address Terry Brown? He's had his card up for a long time. First. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say that the application process for me, if I decided to reapply once my term is sunset, that I could apply for, I am the disabled person. I don't know if I would have to prove that with a medical document, but I've been classified as physically disabled by the federal government since 1973. So I fit that category, but I also live in the southeast zone of the county. So would I check 2 boxes? I mean, how would that work? And how would it say another disabled person wants to serve? How would you compete? How would you determine, as Michael pointed out, who's more disabled than the other? I mean, you got a long way to go is what I think.
It would certainly not be that.
I think, you know, I think everybody has a lot of valid points. I do like Valerie's idea for a survey. Let's survey the board and see what we think and how we can improve it as a whole. I really like that idea, and I support, you know, Paula and James' idea of getting more communications out there. I love to have public comments, you know, to see more involvement. And with that, we'll turn to Ramona and then Albert, do you still have a comment? No?
Okay, thank you. Just a few points. First, just thank you, Jason and TPA staff. You've been awesome, like James said, and others have said. You've always been available, so I thank you for that. I've been on a great learning curve now for the last almost year. Second, I did want to tag on along with James on the Palm Beach Gardens or any municipality issue, just to add another little point, but every city is different in terms of population too. So we're nearing 60,000 people in Palm Beach Gardens, and West Palm Beach, of course, has their, jurisdiction. So anyway, I know these are points we brought up, so I'm just adding to it. And then finally, I agree with the survey. I think that's an awesome idea, because obviously everyone has a point to say, even if we don't physically say it on the mics right now. So I think that's a great way to poll all the citizenry here. And I do think we're diverse. Maybe that's just me, but if no one knows, I'm a homemaker. I've got homeschooled kids and I take care of a 96-year-old. So maybe that's not good enough for some folks, but I do represent a part of the citizenry. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And Margie, I believe I'm sorry, Mark.
That's all right. We made the full circuit now.
Yes, yes, we
started
did.
here, so I get to be last. I guess there's a couple of things that I wanted to comment on, and one of the first ones is the number of people on the committee, and there's the the fewer the better the cheer, and the more the merrier. And it's a balancing act, and you have to have a quorum. I mean, and the bigger the board gets, sometimes the harder it is to get to a quorum. So managing the size of the board, I understand, is an important aspect. And when you look at how to diversify the board and look at some of the interests, it's the members of the TPA board make the appointments. There's almost a point where you need to go to them and go, as you make your appointments to the TPA board, these are some of the criteria you need to think about also. So, I mean, it's almost a point where some of the information, some of the education to a certain extent is almost a responsibility of the TPA board members. So that when they start making their appointments, they start thinking about, who are they putting on there and why? And should they look at some other aspects of it? I mean, so they play a big role in this because they make the appointments. I have mixed feelings about the representatives from some of the industries. I mean, I really do. I understand that they have input on some of the policy issues at a different level, but one of the things that we do here is learn from each other. And sometimes it would be advantageous to have somebody who is in the transportation industry. And we have folks, like you pointed out, from the development industry, and sometimes I learn from them because they are here. So I don't know how to balance that myself. That's a question I have. I see the value in what you're proposing. I'm not sure how to achieve that balance. But again, I think going back to having the TPA board members understand potentially what the value of this CAC is to them, and having a diverse and thoughtful process for them to pick who they want to be on this board. Sometimes it's whoever raises their hand gets the job. And there may be something where they need to put some thought into it too. And as you go forward with this process, that may be something that again goes to them, is as you make your appointments, these are the things you need to consider in addition. So that's just sort of my comments on that, is that, we have a diverse group here. We might be able to do a little bit more in terms of diversity, and you have to have a quorum.
Yeah, thank you. And as we're making our circle, I have Richard and Ramona. Oh, okay, Richard.
Yes, thank you. So we're 21 members, correct? We want to go to 15. So how do you, if everybody wants to retain their position here and reapply when their term is up and all that, how do you decide which 6 members are going to not be attending these meetings anymore?
So as I mentioned, everyone would serve out their terms. And at that point, and this is only a consideration, this isn't set in stone. We're putting this out for consideration to see if this is the right direction to go to kind of repopulate the CAC. And so I would think that attrition would naturally take care of that because people would still have a seat and they would serve out that term. And when those terms are over, eventually we would have the rest of those seats filled. And if there was a vacant seat and they were eligible, then they would apply for that seat. If not, then, you know, through attrition, that's how it happens. Where there's not enough seats to, you know, there's more people than there are seats. So you would serve out your term or maybe reapply before that term expires. And these are some of the details we're fleshing out here now, is how is it going to work? And getting that input to make those considerations to incorporate into the operating procedures to make it most beneficial for all of you that are sitting here today and potentially future members that will join you.
All right, thank you. Margie,
I did have a comment from Myron that he emailed into us in case he had to leave the meeting. So if you'll allow me to read it.
yes.
Okay.
please.
So he said, as you suspect, I can imagine, I am pleased with the proposal to change the procedures for appointing CAC members. When the current procedure was originally proposed, I opposed it as likely leading to political appointments, which has happened. Witness the number of former elected officials that board members have appointed. Because I feel strongly about this, I plan to offer a modification of the text toward the end of the paragraph that begins, each nomination shall be to wit. A CAC member cannot be an elected official or directly employed by an elected official or a former elected official or a former employee of any governmental entity in Palm Beach County whose formal responsibility included any aspect of the transportation system. I recognize this modification will look like a direct attack on current and former members who fall into these additional categories. I plan to preface my remarks to try to establish that my proposal is philosophical, not personal, and based on two things. One, my experience enforcing the Federal Advisory Committee Act on matters of conflict of interest and perceptions of bias. And two, my judgment that former elected officials and government transportation officers cannot reflect the perspectives of ordinary citizens because of their respective experience. And aside, I have great respect for our current chair for her former work, but having the former TAC chair now chair the CAC is absurd. We should never have gotten into this situation. We also have a former commissioner, maybe a former mayor, and we used to have a former commissioner, all of whom are handcuffed by the positions they took when serving in these capacities. The next issue that I hope to be able to raise is the extent to which TPA staff will be proactive in recruiting applicants and how that might be implemented or merely public solicit applications. The question is not clear on the next to last slide.
Okay, thank you so much. Paula Ryan, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Listen, I love, Michael, your comment, problem in search, a solution in search of a problem, because from my perspective, I've not really heard the problem. The one thing that I think is relevant is the quorum and how that's calculated, because I can tell you right now, we have 5 vacancies. So we're currently at 15, and then we have a number who just habitually don't show up. So, the board has never been unwieldy because they've never really been able to fill the full board. So I think that if that's an issue, let's put that in a bucket and let's talk about how we resolve it. Representation, just to defend myself as a public official, it was because I'm a citizen and wanted to get more involved in how I can help my community and the citizens. And believe me, it is a position of which you get very little satisfaction on a day in and day out basis. It's over the long term as to how you see the governments working together to bring value added to the constituency. So I think that to totally discount any of that is, we're not achieving our diversity goals as far as I'm concerned. And then the final comment that I'll make is everybody comes to this board with a bias if you know what you're getting on that board for. And I'll leave it at that, Myron. So take it away.
Thank you. Albert.
When we were originally meeting out in the western location and Yurin came out and spoke when she had her prior position, I went home and told my wife, wow, this woman spoke today. And what she said, I was just like, I was so drawn in. I was like, she's so intelligent and she's genius about all of the things we're working on. And then when she became our chair, I was like, wow. And the way she runs the meetings, I ran the meeting last time. I was lost. I mean, I'm not a public speaker. So with that being said, I also finished with the mayor of Delray appointed me. I've never been a political figure or on any elected position. I've had 0 conversations with her in 2 years, except for reporting to her that the public restrooms at the beach needed some attention and Public Works was taking their time to fix it. So there's no bias from my side or anybody else that I know of. It just doesn't make much sense to say that. Yes, I am pro-bike. My family's been in the bike business for 60 years. And then my expertise came from multiple friends being killed on A1A. And pushing for bike lanes on A1A, the first bike lanes on A1A. That was how I got involved with transportation. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you so much. James.
Just to wrap this up, I want to say that as we keep talking about this, we need to be mindful of what diversity is. It's not only from geographic, socioeconomic areas, it's also from knowledge, experience, what you bring to the table as far as contributions. On paper, I don't look like I belong here, but I think I've been able to make some good points as we've gone along with this journey. So I just want to be mindful that, let's think more holistic about what paints a picture of the needs of Palm Beach County moving forward. So
All
thank you.
right. Do we have any other comments on this item? One last item, the Florida Bicycle Month, right? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Greg. It's on. Yes.
Is it on? Oh, there it is. Okay. I just want to say one thing that's very clear. And I've sat on here for quite some time, so maybe I'm the old horse sitting at the table, but I've never seen the passion of this committee stronger in, I don't even know how many years, but it's over a decade. And we do have diversity and it's always converting. And there is a lot of difference of opinion on a lot of items. And the diversity of opinion is just as important as diversity of ethnicity, color, where you live, et cetera. I mean, I've known Albert for a long, long time. And we come together here. We're not going out to dinner or anything, but we'll both grew up in different parts of the world and have mutual friends, et cetera. We just wound up here. This was not colluded or anything. And it's nice to see the diversity. I mean, when you grow up in an area, you're going to see a lot of people. And I just thank everybody for taking their time out in their busy lives to spend time on something like this. This was set up to be a citizens advisory committee when transportation improvements were totally voted on by 5 county commissioners that ultimately went to 7 county commissioners. And there was no diversity of any kind. And it was very authoritarian at the time as the money went around. So sometimes, don't look for a problem that isn't a problem, in that, everybody has a term limit that's here of some form. Maybe some of us don't, I don't know. Thank you all for the passion of coming to the committee and keeping the purpose of the citizens' input into the public realm of the people that actually do make the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. So seeing no more cards and no raised hands, we will move on to our last item. Yeah, the Florida Bicycle Month. If you can. Yeah, thank you, Greg. Yeah, thank you so much. So Valerie, you're giving us an update on this item?
Yeah, Alyssa, our pedestrian bicycle coordinator, was going to cover it, but she also had to run, so I'm going to cover it for her. You'll hear more about this next month, but we wanted to let you know that next month is March Florida Bike Month. And we're very excited about this. We join the state of Florida every year in doing a proclamation to celebrate bicycling and promote bicycle safety. And we join the state of Florida in that, and also the county in doing this. But we also encourage all of our municipalities to also do a proclamation. So last year we had 13. We're going to push on all these municipalities to do a proclamation again this year, but we have a goal to get at least 15 this year. So if you guys can help us, if you know any other municipalities that you don't see on this list, or even the ones that are on this list, encourage them to do it again. If they're not on this list, also please encourage them. We do have a template, a sample proclamation that's really easy to use on our website, or at palmbeachtpa.org/walkbike. And Alyssa is also our point person for this. So we're bringing it to you now because I know it takes time to get on the agendas for March. So we also encourage our municipalities to do events for Florida Bike Month. So here are some examples of events that have happened in the past. And we have a calendar where folks can add events, walkbikepalmbeach.org. You can find it there. So we encourage you to add and find events to participate as well. At the TPA, we are planning several webinars during Florida Bike Month that we encourage you to participate and listen in on. Alyssa will be doing one on safe bicycling on March 3rd. We're also doing a webinar on building cycling cities. It's actually a book by Chris Brentland from the Dutch Cycling Embassy on March 9th. And then we're also having a webinar on bikeonomics, the economic benefits of bicycling in your community and having more bike facilities. So that's one on March 15th. So just a heads up that these are coming up so you can register and save the date. And the TPA is doing our annual bike ride on March 11th. This is aligning with West Palm Beach's Bike to Work Week. So they're going to be having activities all week, but we're meeting here at the TPA about 7:30 a.m. on Friday, March 11th. We encourage you to join us. We're really excited too, because we're going to be having some Bright Bikes from Brightline, their new bike share program that should be launching any day now. And we're partnering with them for this ride. So if you need a bike, if you have a bike, bring your bike. If you need one, register for the event and let us know and join us for this bike ride that morning. And if you want to extend your stay a little, after the ride, we're meeting at City Hall to join the City of West Palm Beach in their celebration to wrap up their Bike to Work week. And that was Alyssa's presentation. Keep us posted if you have any questions, if you're doing events, and we're really excited for Florida Bike Month.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm excited to see all these events coming up again in the spring. So last item is really administrative items. There's no more items.
No, I will note, I did note during the TAC meeting that normally we just provide you your 2022 meeting dates, but this time it was adopted under the consent agenda for our board. So if there's any changes you would like to make, it would need to go back before our board. And then your meetings in October were adjusted to accommodate the Jewish holidays.
Oh, okay, perfect. So our next meeting is March 2nd, 2022. So at this time, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.